Grief doesn't follow a straight line. It winds. It loops. It hides under clean dishes, behind polite smiles. Inside, the sound of the clock ticking louder at night. It's been almost a year since James died. 40 years of marriage, and then just silence. No more footsteps in the hallway. No more toothbrush beside mine. No more Sunday morning pancakes, even when we were too tired to finish them. People said I was doing well, strong. They called me. But what does strong mean when you're sitting alone at the dinner table, pouring tea for one, and still setting his cup out of habit? What they didn't see, what no one saw, was what I did every night before bed. I reached under my mattress and pulled out the box. Inside were letters. Letters James had written me over the years. Some were sweet. Some were foolish. Some were angry and apologetic, because we were human. But they were all him. All us. I kept them safe like heirlooms, until the night I burned them. No. One tells you that grief can turn on you. It doesn't just ache. Sometimes it accuses. And one night, it whispered, "He kept something from you." I don't know where that thought came from, but it sank in. It festered. It curled itself around every memory, until they no longer brought comfort, only questions. Why did James always hesitate when I brought up that trip in '92? Why did he flinch when our neighbor's name came up? Why did I find that old key in his coat pocket that he never explained? These weren't things I'd ever obsessed over before. But now, lone, raw, and wounded, I did. So I took the letters. All of them. I lit the fireplace. I told myself I was setting myself free. They burned in minutes. 40 years of us, curling to ash in orange light. I thought it was over. I thought I could sleep. But the very next morning, I found something. Something I hadn't known was there. Tucked inside my pillowcase. Folded, yellowing. Sealed in a small blue envelope. Dressed not to me, but written in James' unmistakable handwriting. There was no date, no stamp. Just my name. And something about the way it felt in my hands. My knees buckled before I even opened it. What we bury doesn't always stay buried. Sometimes, it finds a way back when we're just broken enough to listen. This story isn't just about love, or grief, or betrayal. It's about the secrets we carry even in the most devoted relationships. It's about the things we leave behind without meaning to. And it's about one letter, one confession, one final truth that turned everything I believed about my marriage upside down. If you've ever loved someone deeply, if you've ever questioned what was real, if you've ever tried to let go of something your heart couldn't quite bury, then this story is for you. Before we begin, if you're new here, welcome to Life After 50. This channel is a quiet corner for those who have lived, lost, and still hope. We tell stories that don't just speak, they stay. If that sounds like home, please subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss the next one. And if this story speaks to you, share it with someone who may need it too, because sometimes a single letter can open every door you thought was closed. The next morning, something in me shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a loosening, like the slow untangling of tightly knotted thread. I woke up, made coffee, and poured 2 cups out of habit. One for me, one for the man whose voice now only existed on tape. I left his cup across the table, as if he might still walk in. arms full of the Sunday paper, apologizing for forgetting to buy cream. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but it softens the edges so they no longer cut when you breathe. Anonymous. That morning, I sat in the chair he used to nap in, holding the last letter. The one he had hidden, not out of shame, but out of fear. James was many things. Brave wasn't always one of them. I replayed that truth over and over again, that he had been weak, that he had made a mistake, but also that he had loved me, with the same flawed human hands that had once held someone else, and somehow, I still missed those hands. Over the next few days, I began a quiet ritual. Each morning, I'd write one memory on a piece of paper. Not just the good ones. All of them. The night I locked him out, after he forgot our anniversary. The way he once cried in the garage after losing his job, thinking I couldn't hear him. The time he drove 2 hours to bring me a pair of glasses I forgot during a weekend away with my sister. The time he didn't call for 3 days because we fought and he didn't know what to say. The time he built Max's treehouse with a broken thumb. The night he held me after I found out my mother passed and didn't say a word. Just let me fall asleep on the floor, our backs against the fridge. Each of those moments became a stone in a jar I kept on the mantle. I didn't label the jar. I didn't need to. It was our life. All of it. A week later, I found something else. A shoebox inside our attic trunk. It had my name on it, scrawled in black Sharpie. Inside were things I hadn't seen in years. My high school poetry notebook. A broken necklace he tried to fix. A Mother's Day card from Max, with stick figures and glitter. And a small envelope, dated June 1995. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a short note. You're probably mad. I probably deserve it. But someday, if you ever wonder whether I saw you, really saw you, I did. Every morning, every night. Even when we were broken. Especially then. I placed that letter beside the others, and something in me softened again. The healing wasn't linear. Some nights, I still curled up on my side of the bed, and ached to feel him breathing beside me. Sometimes I hated him for never telling me, for dying with that secret pressed between us. But then I'd remember the way he looked at me after my stroke. How he whispered, "You're still the strongest person I know," even when I couldn't speak for weeks. How he spoon-fed me mashed potatoes and cried more than I did when I walked again. That man, the one who failed me, was also the one who saved me. And that contradiction, that's what love is. Not a fairy tale, but a raw, honest, trembling mess. We are all broken. That's how the light gets in. Leonard Cohen. Max came to visit that Sunday. He found me in the garden, clipping the dead rose heads, humming something from the radio. "Mom," he said carefully, "are you doing okay?" I looked at him and smiled. "I'm doing something better than okay," I said. "I'm remembering." He sat beside me on the porch. We drank lemonade. I told him stories I never thought I'd speak aloud. About how stubborn his father was. How he once painted our entire bedroom lavender, just because I mentioned it in passing. How we once got lost on a hiking trail, and ended up finding a hidden waterfall land, kissed like teenagers under it. Max laughed. Then he asked, "Do you forgive him?" I thought about it, and then I answered, I think. I'm learning how to love him better. Even now. That night, I pulled out James's last letter again. Read it by the soft lamplight. The paper had grown thinner in the corners. But the words still held weight. And then I did something unexpected. I wrote another letter. Not to him, but to her. The woman from Charleston. The one he'd never named. I didn't know where to send it. I didn't even know if she was alive, but I wrote it anyway. To the woman who shared a night with the man I built a life with, thank you. For reminding him that kindness exists. For letting him go. For being human, as we all are. He came back to me. Not perfect, but real. And I've come to realize, love doesn't ask for perfection. It just asks that we stay. He stayed. I folded it, tucked it in the same envelope, and placed it beside his final note under my pillow. 2 truths. 1 heart. This morning, I woke up before the sun. The house was quiet. The world still asleep. I walked to the porch, wrapped in the cardigan he once wore, and sat with my coffee. I no longer poured a second cup, but I still left the seat across from me empty. Not because I expect him to return, but because love leaves room. Always. Love's greatest legacy isn't in what it gives while we're alive, but in what remains when we're gone, unknown. They say grief arrives in waves, but no one tells you that sometimes it sneaks in as silence. That morning, silence clung to everything: my breath, my coffee, the sunless sky outside the kitchen window. It had been 10 months since James passed, but the weight of his presence hadn't lifted. It lingered in the scratches on the floorboards where his wheelchair used to creak, in the way his favorite cardigan still hung over the back of the chair, as if he'd just stepped out, in the dust-covered stack of letters hidden in a cedar box beneath our bed. I had kept them for 40 years. The first was written a month after we married. The ink had faded, but the emotion hadn't. He was working on the road, installing power lines in Arkansas, when he wrote, "I miss you more than coffee," which is saying something. "Come spring, let's plant tomatoes like your father used to. I want to grow with you, Margaret. Not just old. Better. Better." That was always James's way of loving, messy, boyish, and earnest. He was the kind of man who never remembered anniversaries, but brought home strawberries in December just because I once told him I liked them as a child. A man of few words, but he poured himself into those letters. He wrote when he couldn't say what needed saying. So for decades, I read and reread them. But something had changed. In the weeks leading to his death, James had grown distant. His body had withered faster than we expected: pancreatic cancer. Cruel and quick, but it was his silence that hurt the most. There were things left unsaid, spaces between us that widened like cracks in plaster. And so, last night, I opened the cedar box one final time. I read them all, slowly. I smiled. I laughed. And then I cried like a woman mourning twice. Then I fed them to the fire. Each letter, each fragment of him, I could no longer carry. The house smelled like cedar smoke and ghosts. The next morning, I woke with a strange weight beneath my pillow. I reached under and found a letter, folded neatly. My name written in blue ink, not the usual black, The paper was soft at the edges. I stared at it, heart thudding, suddenly dizzy. James's handwriting, one I had never seen. I sat there, frozen, for an hour. The house was still. Just the tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. And finally opened it. If you're reading this, it means I never found the courage to tell you. That first sentence gutted me. He spoke of 1985, a work trip to Charleston. How he stayed longer than planned. How he'd felt lost. He was 43 then. Our marriage had been fraying at the edges. We were exhausted, barely talking, both too proud to say we were drowning. And then this line. There was someone. Not love. Just a moment. I needed to feel seen, even for a night. I hated myself the second it ended. I stopped reading. The letter dropped to my lap. I stared at the wall and couldn't breathe. When you share your life with someone for 4 decades, you convince yourself you know them fully. Their breath patterns, the way they curse under stress, the lies they don't tell because they love you too much. But suddenly, I didn't know James. Had he really done this? And kept it buried all these years? A man is not just what he confesses. He is also what he chooses to hide. Unknown, I picked up the letter again. He had written more. I didn't tell you because I couldn't bear to see what it would do to you. Not because I thought you couldn't survive it, but because I knew I couldn't. He said he'd spent the rest of his life making it right in small, invisible ways. The way he brought me soup when I was sick. How he sat through my boring books club dinners. The silence he chose when we fought, not out of surrender, but reverence. That afternoon, I found myself walking through the house like a ghost. I traced my fingers along the banister where his cane used to rest. Stood in front of the hallway closet where he'd hidden my Christmas present every year, always wrapped in newspaper, because he hated wasting money on glittery gift wrap. In the kitchen drawer, behind the rubber bands and expired coupons, I found a cassette tape, labeled in his sloppy scrawl, "For M1, she wants to throw something at me." I blinked, he knew. Even then, I played it. Static, then music, then his voice. "Hey you, if you found this, I either did something dumb, or you're just nosy. Either way, I love you. I always have. Even when I didn't know how to show it. Especially then." I sat on the floor and wept. Because I didn't know whether to feel betrayed or loved. And maybe it was both. That evening, I made tea in the old chipped kettle. The one he never let me throw away. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and steam. I sat at the table with the letter, the tape, and a photo from 1979, me in curlers. Him holding our son with one arm, and a burnt piece of toast in the other. He looked proud, like he'd done something impossible. And maybe he had. He'd loved me for a lifetime. Imperfectly but fully. Maybe that was the only miracle I ever needed. Love isn't always loyal in action, but it can be faithful in its return. Unknown, that night, I wrote him back. Just one line. "You were right. I am braver than you, but only because you loved me first." Then I placed both letters beneath my pillow, and slept through the night. There's a moment after the story ends when the silence grows louder. After the letter is folded. After the fire dies out. After the truth no longer burns but hums softly. like a wound that no longer bleeds, just reminds you of where you've been. I don't know if I'll ever understand everything James felt that year, or what it meant when he chose to hide that letter instead of speak it out loud. But I know this: we are not just the best things we've done, and we are not only the worst. Love is not made in the grand gestures, the anniversaries, or the carefully framed photographs. It is built in the shadows, through forgiveness, doubt, laughter through tears, and holding on, even when the thread frays. That letter didn't ruin my love for James. It made it real. He was flawed. He was afraid, but he was mine, and I was his. And in the end, he gave me the truth, even if too late for a conversation, but just in time for healing. To forgive is not to forget, it's to release the power of the pain. Anonymous. We carry people inside us for a lifetime, not as they were, but as they made us feel. Unknown, somewhere out there, someone is holding onto a secret, and someone else is holding onto an illusion. But in between them is a space where real love lives, the messy kind, the human kind, the kind that says, I failed, but I still chose you. If you're still watching, maybe this story found you for a reason. Maybe you're grieving. Maybe you've burned your own letters, metaphorical or otherwise. Maybe you're wondering what was ever real. Let me say this to you: you are not alone in that silence. We've all loved imperfect people. We've all held truths that trembled in our hands, and yet, we keep going, we keep loving. We keep leaving room for the unexpected grace of one forgotten letter in a pillowcase. If this story touched your heart, I hope you'll do two things. Subscribe to Life After 50. This is a place where our scars aren't hidden, they're honored. Share this video with someone who's been holding on to grief or doubt for too long. You never know what one story can unlock in someone else's heart. Thank you for listening. Thank you for remembering. And above all, thank you for still believing that, even after everything, it's never too late to feel something real.